tore the rotator cuff on my right shoulder, and it gradually got worse and worse and worse quite slowly. It wasn't a traumatic thing, and I just found eventually I actually couldn't lift my arm above this point here, and also across my body. Actually, although I do a lot of sport, I mean, it was impossible for me to play any racket games, or I was actually a PE teacher, so demonstrating javelin and discus and shot just wasn't happening. You know, I could hardly pick them up. So I had it MRI'd, and it showed that I'd actually torn the rotator cuff. So I had that repaired, and I had that done through open surgery, not keyhole. Yeah. That was about 10 years ago, yes. And I knew at the time, even that long ago, my left shoulder wasn't that good, but it wasn't really giving me that many problems. And after about a few more years, I had a steroid injection into my left shoulder because it was only partially torn. And I sort of knew that the rehab was about the same if I had the operation done with a partially torn rotator cuff. And then I was doing a lot of swimming, I was doing a lot of front crawl training, and this actually flared up really badly, and it was very, very painful. I ended up in A&E, thought I might have dislocated the shoulder. It was extremely painful. So I came to the Circle Bath and saw Mr. Jennings. Had to get a taxi in from home because I couldn't drive or anything, and felt really, really quite unwell. It was not very pleasant. I sort of staggered into Mr. Jennings' office, and he put a steroid injection into it. And within about 2 minutes, the pain started to immediately subside. I wasn't in that excruciating pain any longer. And the pain sort of went away. Day by day it got better, and I was able to move around, but I could feel that my shoulder wasn't right. So after an MRI scan, it showed that I had again torn the rotator cuff. So that was all set up then to have that operated through keyhole. But when he operated, he found that I'd also nearly torn the bicep as well. So it was a little bit more of a complicated operation, the second one. But I do know, having had the other one done, that it does take a long time before you can get full range of movement. But I know eventually, in a year's time, it'll be as good as my right shoulder. So it's really, really worth having done. I was a PE teacher for well over 30 years. So I've been thoroughly involved in sport, and sport is a big, big part of my life. And although I'm getting on a little bit, I still do participate in a lot of sport. I did a triathlon last year, and it was a sprint triathlon, so it wasn't an Ironman or anything like that, but it did require very different training. And I think probably the swimming part of it probably made the shoulder problem sort of suddenly come to a head, because front crawl is quite a big action for the shoulder to do, and you're working against the resistance of the water as well. I did come in as an inpatient with the full intention of staying the night, but one of my biggest anxieties was the general anaesthetic, because the last time I'd had a GA was with my right shoulder, and I felt pretty poorly for about a week afterwards. I felt absolutely dreadful after the operation. The shoulder was fine, but I was very, very sick. Didn't feel good at all. And I talked this through with Mr. Jennings and said I was really concerned about that. And I'd heard that you could have this operation done through a nerve block in the neck. So I very much opted for that. I said, yes, please, because I really didn't want to have general anaesthetic. He said I couldn't really be totally awake through the operation, but if they put a nerve block into my shoulder, or through my neck into my shoulder, then they wouldn't have to use so much anaesthetic. And I have to say, it was absolutely brilliant. I woke up and I felt totally fine. I wasn't even sleepy, didn't feel at all unwell. I felt as though I felt exactly the same as when I'd come in before the operation. So that was really good. So to be able to come in and be able to be seen so quickly and to have pain relief, although it's through the injection, done, and to feel so much better, it was first class. I was thrilled, really good. I think doing the exercises is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't really see physiotherapy so much as exercises. I see it more as the deep tissue massages that she does that have made such a difference to the mobility of my shoulder. I think it's one of those things that when you've torn your rotator cuff, you can make do for a while to a certain point. As I say, there aren't many things that you do where you have to lift your arm above, your hand above your shoulder, but the trouble is you start to compensate and you start to use your other arm a lot more, and you try and avoid doing movements to use your shoulder, and then you can get sort of a stiff frozen shoulder. So I can't recommend it enough to get it done. It's just bite the bullet and get it done, because the result from the operation is fantastic. I've got 100% movement on my right shoulder. It's like a brand new shoulder. I put it under a lot of strain because I'm a very busy person, but it's perfect.